Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 40th episode this week, where we'll be recapping last Sunday's game versus the Detroit Lions, previewing the Patriots' upcoming game versus the Cleveland Browns this upcoming Sunday, and discussing news around the NFL. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 300 level pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day, as well as at our website at pats300levelpod.com. So, Kevin, big game yesterday. Really good outcome. I don't know if we were expecting to be that drastic of a complete beatdown, but I think both of us had them winning relatively easily, even with Bailey Zappi at quarterback. What was your thoughts of the game? How did it turn out? Yeah.
Well, obviously, I think it was obviously a good outcome. Really good game, especially to be at. Weather was great. Really good game to watch, throwbacks, all that sort of shit. But I think they did a little bit more than we were expecting. None of us thought, the two of us didn't think it was going to be too challenging with team. It's the Lions. They're not that great. I can't remember the exact score that I predicted, but I remember
you predicted 31-17. I did 23-16.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna say I was thinking by at least two scores. Because I know on Sunday when someone was asking me, I was like, oh yeah, I think at least two scores they'll win by, and they won a little bit by more than that. So I think the defense is really the big story here. How they were able to play, kind of shut down Jared Goff, which surprise, surprise, it's been the fourth time now that they've done it in a row. Yep. So he's not a good quarterback. He stinks. Yeah. And I don't know if it's just having the opponents that they had where he got the yardage, because they were playing a lot of meddling teams, but they made the number one scoring offense look dreadful, and they are really not that great of a team too. But
yeah, I mean, with the Lions offense, they have playmakers on offense. Mm-hmm. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have Hockenson, who are two really good playmakers. Mm-hmm. But with Goff at quarterback and the team overall being the team it is overall.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then on the opposite side of for the offense, Zappi looked, I'd say serviceable is probably not nice enough of a term, but he did everything you needed him to do. So I'm not going to come out here and say I've got Zappi fever. I refuse to take part in those chants at the end of the game, but I think he did exactly what he needed to do and did a good job of it. Is he the next starting quarterback for a team? No, not yet. You can't say that. But I think he did a pretty good job.
Yep. No, I agree. I think the one thing that stuck out to me, especially through the first half and it continued through the end of the game, was this reminded me a lot of the 2016 game versus the Houston Texans, when Patriots had their third string rookie quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, starting against a team that made the playoffs, I believe, the previous year. And people were expecting to be good. Granted, no one is really expecting the Lions to be good, but they came in with a pretty top offense, and then they shut them out 27-0. I think Zappi definitely had a better game than Brissett did. Just looking at the stats, Zappi this game, 17 for 21, 188 yards and a touchdown. Jacoby Brissett that game was 10 of 21. But overall, they both did what they needed to do to win the game. Defense shut them out and kind of knew that the pressure was on them because you had more of an unknown at quarterback. So the defense stepped up, and that's kind of what happened in this game too. So I don't think Zappi had the best game of every quarterback, but they didn't give him a lot to do. They just pretty much gave him a basic offense and said, just execute, don't turn the ball over. Mm-hmm. And outside of throwing the ball into Nelson Aguilar's hands, which he has to learn not to do that because it's going to just bounce off his hands, he just had an excellent game for what they asked him to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So we kind of talked about the defense. What were your kind of major thoughts on how they played, what their schemes were, what worked well for them, what didn't work?
I think two big takeaways for me was Jack Jones once again just showing that. I know it's only 5 games and he hasn't really gone up against he went up against Rodgers last week, but the Packers don't really have an elite wide receiver. Mm-hmm. But 2 weeks in a row, just showing that one of the better cornerback rankings of all cornerbacks in football. And after last week, and again after this week, he's rated Pro Football Focus #1 cornerback. You can take that for however you want to take it. I know that their rankings are kind of flawed, but still being that high up as a rookie is pretty impressive, especially being a 4th round pick. And then that interception he had was just great read where he came off of his man when he saw that it wasn't going to him, to catch the ball and to be aware of where he was on the field to get the 2 toes in to have it count as a catch is just incredible, especially for a rookie. And then my other impression was just how good Matt Judon looked. And one thing that I think we forgot to mention on the previous podcast, but I know you and me talked about during the week leading up to it, is the Lions have one of the better offensive tackle combos in the NFL. And he just had his way with them. I believe he had 7 pressures, 2 sacks, one of them being a strip sack, which led to the touchdown. But he was just doing everything. And not only was it just rushing the passer, but it was also chipping against Hawkinson, which kind of forced him out of his game and not having a big factor at all. So those were my biggest takeaways.
Yep. Yeah, I think the kind of the 2 biggest ones that I was thinking of was one, Judon was one of them. He showed how he's starting the season the same way he did last year. One kind of change that I did notice, it's a lot easier to notice at the home games because you can kind of like keep track of who's in, who's out. They're really kind of starting to manage his snap count now compared to last year. Last year, he was playing virtually every snap, even special teams, which is even we were saying at the time, why bother having him on special teams? He's your best player. Why even risk injury at that point? But there's a bunch of times where he would come out for a few plays here and there, especially when they're like clearly going to be run, like kind of running situations, depending on how they were in the field. And he was getting out, like making sure it wasn't running too much. He was walking out. And then once he came back in, he ran out to it. So it seems like they're trying to kind of control his wear and tear this season, which would really benefit him because the reason why he said that he didn't do too well at the end was just his conditioning. So now that he's focused on it and they're kind of being mindful, I think that's going to be kind of a step in the right direction. The other thing that I thought was a really good aspect for the defense was the secondary and the safety group, where they did a lot of different kind of changes where they would show one thing and then do another, where they would switch coverages. So there was one example where Jonathan Jones was covering, I can't remember who it was, but they ended up, him and Peppers switched coverage after the snap. So Jonathan Jones ended up blitzing and Peppers picked up the player. So
and that's something we kind of alluded to on the previous podcast, where going into this game where Jared Goff isn't the greatest quarterback, and I don't think he has the highest football IQ of quarterbacks. That I at least I was expecting them to kind of have those amoeba style defenses and switching up fronts, and that'll confuse him. That might not work against every single quarterback, but we even saw last year against Brady where they were doing stuff like that, and it kind of threw him off his kilter.
Yep. And then that's what we saw against in the Rams Super Bowl, where they would, because McVay would be talking up until the 15-second mark. There's a catch for Hilaire. The game, we're recording on Monday night. So I've got Hilaire going against Eric, and I just need 8 points now. And I need 6 more points now because of that 10-yard catch. But to get back to what we were saying, with Goff, because McVay would be talking about to the 15-second mark, the Patriots would just stand up the whole linebackers in the defensive line. So that way McVay couldn't say what was going to happen because he had no idea what was going to happen, who was going to be rushing, who was going to be on who. And then by the time the 15-second mark, then they went down and then they kind of moved everything around. So you kind of saw the same sort of thing. It'd be nice to see. It was nice seeing how much kind of stuff they've added to the defense and like the complexity this kind of early on, because it's only week 5. So I am a little excited to see how it starts looking in the next few weeks. Are they able to continue this and what's going to look like?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And that's something that you can't really hone in on as much when you're watching it from the TV broadcast, because you're not able to see the all 22 like you can from the 300 section.
Yep. That's why we got the name.
Yep.
All right. Bailey Zappi. We kind of already talked about him a little bit. I just like to add another thing where he was extremely efficient. 17 of 22. of 21. And he had a little over 100 QB rating. Would have been higher if Nelson Aguilar actually had hands that could do something.
Yeah.
But I think he looked really good for what they wanted him to do. Not really good in the aspect where Mac needs to be looking over his shoulder or anything like that, but he looked very serviceable. He looked a lot more comfortable in the pocket too.
Yeah.
A lot more than towards the end of the Green Bay game, where
which I think part of the reason, which not to cut you off, but part of the reason why he did look so efficient is, I believe, according to PFF, he didn't have a single pressure the entire game.
5% pressure rate, they said, which
okay.
is insanely low.
There was one where he ran out when Hutchinson ran up and should have gotten sacked, but he went for the run. But other than that, just I guess one pressure on 21 dropbacks is insane, which is why he didn't look like he did against the Packers, where he was good when he needed to be, but when he saw running or people running at him, he kind of like freaked out.
Yeah. But even so, he looked like he was kind of maneuvering a little bit better. Knew kind of when to run. It did kind of drive me nuts, where I think there was about 3 times when he was running. He almost had a forward pass every single time. And he's lucky.
Past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, past the line of scrimmage. So it seemed like there's at least one of them I think he actually did.
No, he didn't. I was keeping track of that on on TV where there was the marker.
Okay, yeah, because I'm where I'm coming from. It's all not always kind of straight on, but
yeah.
But yeah, I think he did an extremely good job, and he kind of showed where you can't go saying he's the quarterback of the future or anything like that, but you can definitely say you have a serviceable backup, and Hoyer may be the one inactive from here on out when he comes back, because I feel like the stuff that Zappe can do is the same that Hoyer can do, but I think there's a little bit more upside with him, where you may not have the shit your pants factor with him. So
very true. And just one last thing to add on Zappe is one thing that did impress me is his ability to step up in the pocket to throw, which we didn't really see too much of in the previous week. But overall, I thought he had a really good game for what they asked him to do.
And then the other kind of upside with the offense, Ramondre Stevenson, absolute beast in this game. I know both you and I love the kind of two-head monster I have. And I feel like the more and more carries he gets, the stronger he looks.
Yeah.
And he's averaging, I think, over
5.5 yards per carry on the
season, which is just nuts. And I just hope they keep feeding him. I hope Harris's injury isn't something that's going to keep him out. It may be. I know last year, and really pretty much every year with him, he gets hurt like every game with the hamstring. And ends up coming back. So I don't think it's going to be that as bad. But the 2 backs that you have are incredibly good, and that's the other thing that's making this work with Mac being gone, where they're establishing the run. They're doing really well with the run to make it a lot easier on Zappe. And this is something where you and I were saying kind of offline, not in the last podcast, but I think this is really kind of showing Matt and kind of the coaching staff where, hey, maybe we did try and get too aggressive at the beginning of the year with Mac Jones, and the offense is looking a lot better just because they've simplified it a lot, and they're kind of doing stuff that they were doing last year where they weren't trying to give too much for Mac to do. And I think I'm hoping when he comes back, they do dial it back from what they were trying to do, because this is where they're successful. And this is where they're successful with Brady at the end, where you're running the ball, you have play action. You kind of spread the ball out from there. You're not trying to go downfield the whole time, which that's one of their big things that they're going for this year. They want those 50-50 balls, which it hasn't worked out at all for them. Number one, Parker isn't winning any of them, and he's not running the right routes. You've got Nelson Aguilar, who made a great catch in one game, but he's got hands of stone or butter or oil, or I don't know what.
If it's right in his hands, he won't catch it. But if it's in front of a defender right in front of him's head, then he'll get those.
So again, I think what they've been doing the last couple games should be something to kind of help them go forward and kind of establish a different type of offense.
Yeah. And I'll ask you a question in a second, but one thing that impressed me for Stevenson, not only his running ability, where he had 25 carries, 161 yards, and 6.4 yards per carry. It was the most rushing yards in a game for the Patriots and Jonas Gray back in 2014 or 2016, whatever that game was. But it was also his blitz pickup, where time and time again, he was able to pick up the pressure. And on third down, especially, there were two instances where he picked up the free man blitzing, which allowed Zappe to get a first down, where the other times when Zappe wasn't able to connect that, like he wasn't on the field or it was someone from the other side. But I thought he had a really good game. And the other impressive thing is, of those 161 yards, 111 of them came after first contact, which is just insane. And so the question I have for you, and I was a little confused about this when I saw it, was coming into this game where you have a third string rookie quarterback and going up against a team that's dead last. Granted, they're dead last in yards overall, but dead last in run DVOA. You only had 2 running backs active and you had 6 wide receivers. That was my concern because we saw the game before where Harris got hurt and then Stevenson got hurt another game, where if something happens to one of them or even both, what do you do? Especially considering you had a third string. So I was surprised to see Pierre Strong inactive. And ultimately it didn't hurt them, but freak injury here or there or something happened to Stevenson, like that they could have, granted they had such a big lead to begin with, but I wonder if that's something that they going forward they stick with 3 active.
Yeah, I think that's a completely reasonable question to ask why they were doing it, and it's something they never usually do. They never have 6 wide receivers active at the same time, and one of it being Humphrey, that they kind of consider a tight end, and having Jonnu Smith out really kind of takes the place of him. But
they also had Sokol active too. But
they didn't play him at all, really. So the other thing, though, too, where I wonder what you're going to see next week, or even maybe not next week, but maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now, is Aguilar going to be active? Because Tyquan Thornton pretty much takes the same spot as him. He does the same routes. When he came out for his hamstring, he was the one that replaced him. I'm assuming probably not next week because it's going to take time to ramp him up. He's been out since he got that injury, the collarbone break. But I wouldn't be surprised if Nelson Aguilar is on the bench or traded at halfway through point if Tyquan Thornton can show enough. But the other question, though, too, is with Montgomery not even practicing yet, and you have Pierre Strong, but who's your other running back too? So let's say Harris is out. You have Strong, and what are you going to do?
Probably activate or have Strong, and then maybe bring up Kevin Harris or JJ.
I forget about JJ.
Yeah, I always forget about JJ. But she looked good in the preseason, to be fair.
Yeah. So actually, maybe that's what'll happen. But yeah. All right. Moving on. You want to hit in the O-line or anything miscellaneous, or go straight 3 up, 3 down?
The one thing with the O-line just is they great in the run game, great in the pass game. That's the best they looked. Granted, the Lions aren't that great of a defense, but Hutchinson did have a good first half, but has been invisible ever since. But just have to give them props where in a game where you had third string rookie quarterback, they did everything they needed to do.
Yep. And I think the other big thing was, this is what we've been accustomed to with the Patriots over the last 20 years or so, where any of those games you expect them to win. So any of these bad teams, you beat up on them, and that's what they did. And they're showing that this is why they're never going to be like a losing team, because with Bill as the head coach and the players that they have and the talent that they have, as long as they have someone that can actually physically throw the ball, not Cam Newton, they're going to at least be a middling team at worst. So for anyone saying they're going to win 4 or 5 games, it's ridiculous. So I think this kind of shows it up. You're not one of those bottom of the pack teams.
Yep. And speaking of bottom of the pack, one thing we haven't touched on, and I think was important to the game, was the Lions were 0 for 6 on 4th down, which I understand at the end of the game you have to go for it, but some of the decisions were just shows why the Patriots continue to have success, because there's so many bad coaches in the NFL. And I know some people, Grant, I didn't watch Hard Knocks, but I know some people after watching Hard Knocks said, like, oh, I think the Lions might have a good shot this year. Campbell seems like a good coach. But
Mm-hmm.
everything I've seen over the last year plus and everything he says in the media, it seems like he's someone that the players will get behind, but he doesn't really know what he's talking about, X's and O's, which is what you really need a football coach for. It's one thing to have a motivator, but if you're going for it on 4th and 9 from your 40-something yard line and you have Jared Goff at quarterback, do you really think anything positive is going to come out of that?
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing going into the game, the Patriots knew that they like to go for on 4th down. They've gone for it before this game 12 times and were successful 8 times. Yeah. So you could actually see the Patriots defense were staying out there. They weren't looking to the sideline. They kind of knew ahead of time if it's 4th down and somewhat manageable, that it's likely going to be there. So that way they're not kind of caught off guard and they're not running back and forth and trying to figure out where to go. So that was another kind of beneficial thing just from the Patriots coaching, where they knew that was going to happen and they were actually really prepared for it.
Yep. No, that's fair. All right. And then just one last thing. Hunter Henry, who is quiet the first 4 weeks, he had a pretty productive game. I think 4 catches, 45 yards. So hopefully that just gets him in the right direction, because maybe it's also the basic offense and he's someone that needs, like, maybe the new offense isn't really to his style, but that's at least something, a positive, that you need this tight end group to be productive if you want to go far this year.
Exactly. Even though I think probably half his yards came when a guy was ambulanced off the field, but luckily they said he just has a concussion, and nothing any worse, no permanent spinal injury or anything. 3 up, 3 down. We've got pretty similar ones, so we can kind of fly through this one. Who's your first?
First one is just O-line, where allowing 1 pressure on 21 dropbacks, having the running game go for 171 yards. Granted, a lot of that is because of Stevenson, but again, he's my number 2. Surprise, surprise. But I think they just had an incredible game, best game for an O-line I've seen in a long, long time.
Yep. That's a good pick. They were kind of one of my honorable mentions. My first was Ramondre Stevenson. We talked about him. Beast in the running game, good in the passing game. Blitz pickup. Everything that you thought he was going to be at the end of last year, he's continuing it now, and is one of probably the top 10 running backs in the league, you'd think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
He's been awesome. Your next one,
Stevenson.
Okay. My next one is Matthew Judon. We talked about him. He's your best defensive player this year. Some you may say Wise, but Judon's definitely kind of showing.
I think the last 2 weeks Judon's taken over for Wise, but I think part of the reason, which Bill even alluded to today, was part of the reason for Judon's success is because you have Wise on the other side.
Yep. That's the other thing I was going to say is you're seeing, because of how well Wise has played, there's been a lot more one-on-ones with Judon this year, and he's not getting double teamed as much. And then that also helps when Barmore's in. Barmore's getting double teamed a lot. So it's who would you rather try and go up against? And the Lions probably figured, we've got 2 great tackles, we're going to take our chances there and double team in the middle, and it didn't work out for them.
Yep.
Your next one.
Judon was my number 3. So
all right,
nothing much more to add.
Number 3 for me was Zappe. I don't think he did anything kind of really extraordinary or anything like, holy shit, what was this? But I think he did really well for what they needed him to do. Again, very efficient, didn't make mistakes, didn't look like the moment was too big for him. I thought he played really well in this game for what they needed.
Yep. No, I agree completely. He was one of my 4 honorable mentions. Just to when you win 29-0 versus the top scoring offense in the NFL, I think you have to have some. So like Jacoby Myers, 7 catches, 101 yards, I believe, and a touchdown. He was incredible. Just dependable Jacoby Myers. Jack Jones, like I said earlier, was really, really good. And Bailey Zappi was one of the honorable mentions. And then often forgotten because of how dependable he is, Nick Folk. 5 for 5 on field goals, 2 extra points. He extended his consecutive field goal streak under 50 yards. I think 62 in a row now, something ridiculous like that. So, and just a really good game all around in all 3 phases, except for 1 kick return.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That I couldn't really kind of disagree with any of those. And Jacoby Myers is another one too, where we were kind of talking during the game where he's just someone where you kind of just take for granted how good he is for this team. He
Yeah.
may not be as beneficial if he was on a different team than he is for you, but he knows this offense really well. He knows where to get open. He's not the fastest guy, but he's dependable, and he can get kind of thrown and any kind of ball in the middle and will get up right away.
Yeah.
Where you and I both say that Mac Jones tries to get him killed about once a game. Bailey Zappi did the exact same thing this past week. So,
but he gets up every single time.
Yeah, and he holds on to the ball. He's not like Nelson Aguilar, and he's really what this offense needs. And I think having him back really helped as well.
Yep, I agree.
All right, 3 downs, and I don't think either of us have 3, but you can go.
Yeah, I think we both have the same, but number 1 is Nelson Aguilar, where 3 out of 5 games he has essentially a turnover. Two games he had a fumble in the fourth quarter, which were 2 of your losses, and then this week the ball right in his hands that turned into an interception for Bailey Zappi. But you can't be turning the ball over when you're this early in the season and you're going up against good teams, but bad teams especially, that's going to keep them in the game. So that's something that if he keeps doing this, I don't know if he's going to see the field much, especially with Thornton coming back.
Yep. Yeah. Nelson Aguilar I had as well. Again, the turnovers, it's been way too many now. It's ridiculous. You're getting paid $15 million this year, and you can't hold on to the ball. I've seen, I know I've said this with another guy this year that Wynn came back and had a strong game, but I'm done. You can't have, he's a liability where you can't risk having a turnover, where a lot of these games come down to one score. And we saw it multiple times where they're driving in, he cripples you with that. And luckily this one didn't come to bite them in the ass, but you can't keep doing this. And with Thornton coming back, and the emergence now of Bourne having increasing snap counts again, I think more and more you're going to have to. And again, like we said before, you're going to have your playmakers, your fast guys. But if he's a liability, you can't play him. So
I agree.
That was ridiculous. And then number 2, we both have the same one. Red zone offense. If you want to kind of go through why.
So red zone offense. The one thing that's been hurting the Patriots, and it hurt them last year, or as the season went on, it got a little better, but they're driving. And then once they get within the 25 or so, which is, I consider the new red zone, because field goal kickers have gotten a lot better than they were 20 plus years ago. But once you get inside that 25-yard line, they're just not able to do anything. And you leave 4 points on the board, where you're lucky you have a kicker in Nick Folk, which is automatic, and you'll end up with at least 3 unless you turn the ball over. But you're leaving 4 points on the board, and in these close games, that could be the difference. And they ended up winning 29-0, but you had to kick 5 field goals, where if you're going up against a team outside of the Lions, that might be the reason why you lose the game, where you only get 1 touchdown in those 6 times inside the red zone, 6 or 7 times.
No, I agree. I think this is something, not even going back to last year, but even the last few years, even beforehand, they've had trouble with the red zone. And a lot of that just comes down to kind of your personnel, who you have. Last year, they kind of got around it because they ended up going to Henry, and they kind of got a lot more comfortable with him there. But it kind of really shows you need to have explosive players and people that can kind of get open quick. And that doesn't really fit what they have right now with Myers. Like we said, as much as we like him a lot, he's not quick. He's slow. He takes a while to kind of get open. Henry, the same kind of thing too, in those like really short red zone areas, where if it's less than 10 yards, we see him so many times. He's trying to shift, trying to get open. He doesn't turn his head around in time. Parker's is a slow wide receiver. They don't really have that quick Edelman type, but they do with Thornton coming back.
And
so I'm really
Bourne.
So I'm really excited to kind of see how that happens as the year progresses, especially because they're integrating Bourne more, and then Thornton coming back, and you kind of really saw his shiftiness in the preseason. So it may be kind of aided by that and kind of their increased usage of Henry, I think.
So that's one thing that going forward they need to get better, and at least I'm just thankful they have Nick Folk, because we've seen other kickers around the league where they can cost them the game. But
Yep. All right. Your trivia question of the week.
yep. So this week's trivia question of the week, it's kind of inspired by Matt Judon having 6 sacks on the season through 5 games.
Okay.
Following up on his season last year where he had 12 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So if he continues this pace, or even doesn't continue the pace but gets 4 more, he'll have double-digit sacks.
Mm-hmm.
How many Patriot players, if any, have recorded multiple double-digit sack seasons with the Patriots?
2.
Who?
Andre Tippett and Chandler Jones.
Correct. And as a bonus, there's 2 players that had 9.5 sacks, which if they had half a more sack, they would have ended up with double digits. Any guess on who those are?
2 players, 9.5. 9.5. Oh God. Can I get a hint of which decade?
They both played in the same decade, and they both played within the last 20 years.
All right. 20 years. Mike Vrabel.
Correct. Yeah, 12 and a half one season and 9.5 in another.
And then McGinnis.
Correct. He had 11 in one season. He had 2 seasons with 9.5, and then 1 additional season with 9. So good job.
That's not too bad then. Oh,
yeah.
Shit. Holmes sacked. It's good. Yeah, bring it Edward Hilaire in. All right. 5 questions of the week. We'll kind of bang through this and then kind of get on to the Browns game after the news around the NFL. First question. What was the worst roughing the passer penalty this weekend? And kind of narrow it down to 2 of them. The one on Brady or the one in the Chiefs Raiders game?
So there were 5 awful roughing the passer calls this weekend, and I think those 2 were the worst. And this is just something that penalties need to be reviewable in the NFL, because this is just getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
But as bad as the one on Brady was, where it was just a perfect form tackle where he didn't even throw him into the ground, the one on the Raiders Chiefs game was even worse, because it was a fumble. It can possibly be the difference in the game. I mean, granted, the Brady one could have been the difference in the game too, where it would have been 4th down and the Falcons getting the ball back, but it led to 1st down ending the game. But the Raiders one, by the time Derek Carr went to the ground, the Jones already had the ball. So Tom Pelissero tweeted this out, and I think a lot of people did. And it's Jones is the first player in NFL history to get a roughing the passer penalty when he's holding the ball.
Yeah, I would say clearly the Raiders Chiefs one. It was completely ridiculous. Let alone that was ridiculous. The Brady one, the one in the Patriots game, a handful of other ones. They're ridiculous right now. And I think they're trying to overcompensate for the Tua situation.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. It's like flag football.
Yeah.
Next question. Matt, we'll get into the news around the NFL, but who's going to be the next head coach fired? Not Matt Rule.
Hackett.
All right, I agree. Hackett. I'd say the 3 options would be between Hackett, Reich, and Rivera. And there was kind of news out from Peter King that Reich could actually be the next one before if they keep losing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked about that. The one thing with Reich, though, is he usually has a slow start to the season, and then as the season gets on, they pick up. And considering how bad the South is this year, he might be able to work it in his favor, or it might be Jim Irsay saying just pulling the plug quick, since they still have time to turn the ship around.
Yep. Yeah. So I'll say Hackett as well.
I'll go with the next one since I came up with this.
Okay.
Who will have a longer head coaching tenure? Urban Meyer with the Jacksonville Jaguars, which was 13 games, or Nathaniel Hackett with the Broncos?
I'm going to say Nathaniel Hackett just because I think it's going to be the end of the season. They'll realize that he's not fit. I don't think the ownership would look at this team and say, we have everything it needs to take to win this year anyway. So I don't think firing mid-season is going to really increase their chances. You have the Chiefs who are really good in the division. The Raiders have shown, even though they're 1-3 right now, they've been within 1 score of every game. And it's not like they're 1 score with every game. Like the Broncos, they're actually scoring. So I think between those 2 teams, And then even the Chargers with a terrible head coach, you can't say you have any chances this year. So I think it would be end of year. They would probably fire him.
I'm going with Urban Meyer will have a longer tenure.
Oh,
I think Hackett's been so bad this season that after 3 games, they had to hire him a game day personnel assistant to help him with everything.
Yeah.
And then that first game, he loses his challenges. And then the game after that, they go 0 for 4 in the red zone. Second time this season, they go at least 0 for 4 in the red zone. So I think the Broncos had high expectations this year. I think part of that was assuming Russell Wilson was the old version of Russell Wilson, which I don't think he is. But I think that they're just, if there's another week or two, like this first 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I think he's gone.
Yeah, I can see that though too. And Russell Wilson's cooked, so that contract's going to screw him over the whole time. Next question. Which week is Mac Jones going to come back in?
This week, I think, against the Browns.
I think it's going to be the following week against the Bears. I think it'll give him an extra week to recover. And that way he doesn't have to fly out to Cleveland. He can stay home one more week, not have to worry about getting on a plane or anything like that. Elevate the leg a little bit more, keep it looking good. And just based on the video that was coming out into last week, he still didn't look that great walking around.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to be all fixed in 1 week, and I'd rather him be closer to healthy, especially how soft the schedule is. And Zappy doesn't look like he sucks. So
yeah, that's fair. No, I think it could be next week too, but I think just based on everything, he's coming back this week.
Yeah. All right. And last question. Who will make it to the World Series and who will win? And I think you could, if there's a second part of this question, you can ask it because I don't really know what it is.
So my dream matchup is Padres versus the Indians or Cleveland Guardians. So my San Diego Padres versus old friend Terry Francona. But I think ultimately it'll be Astros winning it all, unfortunately, versus the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I think I had to look to see who was actually in it because I don't follow baseball as much as I used to. I think the Braves are going to be in the World Series, and I think they're going to face the Seattle Mariners.
That's fair.
They're going to completely come out of left field.
And it's not out of left field for people following baseball the last 4 months, but
if you asked me 2 years ago if Seattle was good, I knew they sucked then. So
yeah.
But the Braves are looking really good. They kind of helped aid in the collapse of the Mets, even though it wasn't a complete. I would say it's tough to say it was a complete collapse by the Mets just because they won 100 games,
101 games, and the Braves played like 700 the last 4 months.
So it wasn't like the chicken and beer incident with the Red Sox back in 2011. It was
10 and a half games over the last 3.5 months, which for a team playing 700 baseball, you have to win. Like it's a collapse, but it's not a real collapse, especially considering DeGrom and Scherzer were both out for a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm going to say the Braves and do the tomahawk.
Who do you think wins?
I think the Braves are going to win again.
You think they're going to be the first team since I believe Yankees in 99, 2000 to win back-to-back?
I think so.
That's fair. All right.
I'm confident in my Braves.
Let's hope the Padres this can beat the Dodgers this week, and hopefully they win it all, but we'll see. Probably not.
And news around NFL, Matt Rule fired today. We're taping on Monday. Not too surprising, just based off of what happened, what came out from Pro Football Talk last night. It was a matter of when, not if, they're going to fire him. And kind of the other aspect of them firing him early is that they're hoping he gets hired by a college football team so they don't have to pay him his full contract, and they kind of pay him the difference between what the college contract is and what he was getting. So he is also getting a shit ton of money from them, which I didn't realize he was getting paid this much.
Yeah.
Over $10 million a year, and he's got 4 years left on his contract. So that's a ton of money just to sit at home. So
yeah.
And hell, he's big and fat. He could be lazy enough and just say, screw it, just pay me. But
he was a really good college coach at Temple and then at Baylor. So
all these coaches, none of them think like that. So it's always the next one, power, fame, all that sort of stuff. So And then just one other tidbit: Jimmy Garoppolo wins again.
Yeah.
And we'll just see what happens with him.
Yeah.
One kind of thing that we didn't add in the questions of the week, but you could really ask this would be how many teams really kind of screwed up by not getting him?
I think it depends on teams. If he was in Carolina, for instance, where Baker Mayfield is, I think part of Baker Mayfield not doing well there is he was traded there late, so he didn't have enough time to really learn the offense per se. He was also playing under Matt Rule, who's a terrible coach. But also, they're not better than the Saints. They're not better than the Bucks. So they're not winning the division and making the playoffs. There's only a handful of teams that maybe the Steelers, considering the parity there. But even then, I don't think the roster is as talented as the other teams in the AFC North. I'd say the only one is maybe really the Browns, where you had the cap space to get him. Deshaun Watson's out for 11 games. Jacoby Brissett. He's not going to win you any games. He's not going to lose you too many games. He did essentially lose you this last game, but for the most part, he's not going to lose you too many. Whereas Jimmy Garoppolo probably would have won that game, probably would have beaten the Jets. So instead of them being 2-3, they're probably 4-1 right now.
I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, again, say the Panthers, but Rule kind of, I think he got the worst out of Baker so far. Yeah. And Steelers, that could be one there. The Browns, Seattle's actually doing pretty well with Geno Smith. So
yeah,
you could say even the Broncos might be better off if they had Jimmy Garoppolo instead of
no, their coach is an idiot. They'd still be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, but at least he's not going to be throwing picks like him. All right, we got to move on. Kind of go over Cleveland Browns. We kind of already talked to them a little bit. They've got Jacoby Brissett, former Patriots quarterback, leading the helm until Deshaun the Diddler Watson comes back from his suspension. So Browns right now 2-3. Kind of what you were expecting for record wise, based on Brissett playing. He's usually like a 500 type of quarterback. Serviceable, gets the job done, but nothing kind of too eccentric there. And I think kind of their biggest things, we always talk about what does a team do best and how will they eliminate it? And there's a bunch here. They've got a lot of playmakers. And I would say number one, their running attack is, I think, one of the best running attacks in the league. I think they leading the league. They've got Nick Chubb, who's doing insane this year. Kareem Hunt, really good running back. But then if you look even along the lines, they don't have just them, but they've got Amari Cooper. They've got David Njoku, who's having a hell of a season this year. And they just re-signed him too. So they've got a lot of different keys. And I think the thing that may kind of hurt the Patriots, where we've talked about what they've had the biggest struggles in, and it's the run defense. The linebackers haven't been good enough this year. So that's where they may struggle this week. And hopefully maybe Lawrence Guy comes back this week. He didn't even practice at all this week, so maybe he won't, but this would be a big game for him. And this could be a game. Maybe we see Jamie Collins come up from the practice squad just to help with that run. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's tough to really assess this matchup because they're 2-3, but they've lost every single game. They've been close. Where their 3 losses, they lost to Atlanta by 3, they lost to the Jets by 1, they lost to the Chargers by 2. But they didn't beat any good teams really either. They beat the Steelers and they beat the Panthers. They do have playmakers, like you said, and I think Nick Chubb is the best running back in football right now, where he's run in 5 games almost 600 yards. He's averaging 6.1 yards per carry. So we're talking about how good Ramondre Stevenson has been at 5.5. He's at 6.1 yards per carry on almost 100 carries, 7 touchdowns. And then there's also Kareem Hunt, 4.3 yards per carry, 250 yards. So you're going to have to stop this running attack. That's how you win this game. If they keep running down your throat, they can run for 200 plus yards. And there's, especially if Mac isn't here, you might not be winning that game even with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback.
Mhm.
So I think the number one thing is you have to stop that running attack and make Jacoby Brissett beat you.
Mhm.
There's Amari Cooper, there's Njoku, there's Peoples Jones, who they're pretty good receivers, but like we saw every game this year where Kyle Duggar has been healthy, they've been able to take out other teams' good tight ends.
Mhm.
And then Cooper or Jones, one of them might be able to get some, but I don't think both of them will. And then the other aspect is Kareem Hunt out of the backfield, who can really good receiver out of the backfield. And if he's going up against linebackers, that can be a challenge considering the issues there. But if it's going up against a safety or someone else like that, they might be able to be okay. But I think first and foremost, you have to stop that running attack.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the kind of biggest thing. They're too good there, and you got to really stop them. What are the keys for the Patriots other than that on the opposite side? What are the keys for the offense in this game?
I think the keys to the offense is you have to run the ball down their throat.
Mm-hmm.
The Browns this year have allowed the fifth most rushing yards per game in the league, averaging 138, and the third worst yards per carry at 5.2. But if you look at the last few games, especially the first game, they actually did pretty well against the Panthers, holding McCaffrey to only 33 yards on 10 carries.
Mm-hmm.
But against the Steelers, 22 rushes for 104 yards, 4.7 yards per carry. But then Falcons last week, 33 rushes for 204 yards, 6.2 yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
And then this week against the Chargers, 33 runs, 239 yards per carry, 7.2. And then with the Falcons, it wasn't really anyone beating you too much. It was Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier. And then this week against the Chargers, it was Austin Eckler, he's a good all-around running back, but he's not really a good running back per se. He's usually good because he can catch the ball out of the backfield, but he's usually not running for 100 yards a game, let alone 173 yards and 10.8 yards per carry. And then Joshua Kelly also ran 10 carries for 49 yards. So I think overall you have to just run the ball down your throat, set up your offense by running the ball. Their pass defense is okay. They haven't really gone up against a good quarterback other than Herbert last week, which Herbert was 22 of 34, 230 yards and a touchdown, but he didn't have to throw the ball too much because they were just running so successfully. The thing you do have to worry about with the Browns is they have a really good pass rush with Jadeveon Clowney on one side, and you have Myles Garrett on the other. So with Myles Garrett, especially if he's going up against Isaiah Wynn, I don't know if you have Marcus Cannon as a second tight end or if you just don't even play Isaiah Wynn on passes, but you need to do something to slow up Myles Garrett. And last year, they were actually successful against the Browns. I remember on our podcast, that was one thing we were actually concerned about was how are they going to be able to hold up against that front seven? And I don't know if they even allowed a single sack, but that's something that this week, again, they have to make sure they block Garrett as well as Jadeveon Clowney and the rest of that front seven. If you're able to, whoever quarterback is, keep him upright for the most part, and you're able to have a successful running attack, you'll be in this game. You just have to stop the Browns running attack. That's the number one key for this game.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself. I think we're going to see kind of a 50-50 thing where it's not going to be as bad as it could be, but I don't think it will be as great as kind of it could also be.
Yeah. And then just one last thing, going back to last year's game, Patriots won 45-7, but they were without Damian Harris as well, and they relied on Ramondre Stevenson, who had a pretty successful game, 20 carries for 100 yards. So even if Harris isn't able to go this week, Stevenson has shown against the Browns especially that he can have success, and he's better this year than he was last year. Hopefully you have Harris back so one can spell the other, but also that 1-2 punch and just being at full speed throughout the entire game.
All right, we're going to kind of move into our score predictions now. Patriots right now are the underdogs at 3 points. I don't think it's going to be as kind of close as they're saying. Looking at how the Browns have given up for points this year and kind of how they're scoring and how the Patriots are looking and they're kind of ascending with their offense, I say 34-17.
I think it's going to be close because I think closer than that. I say the Patriots win 31-20 where it's close throughout most of the game. Then in the fourth quarter, they break away. But I think the Browns running attack is going to give them trouble, especially early on. If you're one thing that I forgot to mention is in the Browns' 3 losses, Jacoby Brissett had a turnover, and in their 2 wins, he didn't. So that's one thing where you have to win the turnover battle, especially if you're able to force one of the running backs to fumble, or if you're able to force Jacoby Brissett to have a bad picker here and there. That's another way where you can win this game.
All right. So it should be pretty interesting to see what happens. And pretty excited to see how this team kind of looks forward. 2-3 right now. And is this going to be the upward trajectory like it was last year where they pulled off 7 in a row? They've got a good shot of that happening. And so,
and I believe the Browns game last year is one of the earlier ones in that win streak too.
Yep.
So that's another similarity where they started the season 1-3, 2-4, then they went on a 7-game winning streak and got into the playoffs. Where you have more talent this year, you should be able to. You just have to put it together, not have turnovers, not make mental mistakes. And this is a good game. Will be a good test for them.
Yep, I completely agree. So excited to see how that looks. Looking forward to talk to you guys next week. Again, subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter at Pat's 300 Pod, and our website, pats300pod.com. And subscribe, rate, review. Leave us some comments on the YouTube, any questions that we got. And we're going to try and look to continue the kind of mailbag question of the week next week if we remember to tweet out on time. So looking forward to talk to you guys next time.